The Miami Dolphins may have secured a win against the Jets, but this game didn't exactly inspire confidence. Sure, a win is better than a loss, but what we saw on Sunday felt more like the Dolphins surviving rather than thriving. Against a 3-9 team playing on the road, this should have been a game where Miami dominated from start to finish. Instead, it was a grind, raising questions about where this team is headed as the season reaches its most critical point. Let's start with the defense, which did anything but dominate. Aaron Rodgers looked like his old self, carving up Miami's secondary with ease. He threw for 339 yards, completing 27 of 39 attempts, and didn't throw a single interception. This was a quarterback many thought was winding down his career, but Miami's defense made him look rejuvenated. It wasn't just Rodgers either. Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams both had over 100 yards receiving, running wide open all day thanks to dreadful communication and blown assignments. The Dolphins' secondary was out of sync, and the linebackers didn't help. Rookie running backs Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis didn't light up the stat sheet, but they repeatedly found soft spots in Miami's defense, exposing poor tackling and positioning. This was supposed to be a game where the Dolphins' defense set the tone, but instead, they let the Jets dictate far too much. The Jets punted just twice in the entire game, and it still took overtime for Miami to escape with a win. It wasn't a case of a scrappy underdog exceeding expectations. It was a case of Miami letting a struggling team stick around, which is exactly what a team fighting for playoff relevance cannot afford to do. The Jets had the 31st ranked offense coming into this matchup, and yet Miami made them look functional. If this was earlier in the season, you could chalk it up to rust or a bad day, but at this stage, it's alarming. This team has to win out to keep their playoff hopes alive, and performances like this don't inspire faith. Offensively, there were flashes of brilliance, but even those were tempered by inconsistency. The first half showed promise, with Miami scoring on all 4 of their drives. A touchdown and 3 field goals gave them a lead heading into halftime, and the hurry-up offense they ran on their final drive of the half looked sharp. But there were also missed opportunities. 2 of those scoring drives stalled, including one inside the red zone. This team has too much talent on offense to settle for field goals in those situations. The second half was a different story. Miami punted 3 times, struggling to find the rhythm they had early on. The Jets kept 2 safeties deep for much of the game, daring the Dolphins to attack underneath. Tua Tagovailoa responded with a 70% completion rate, taking what was given, but the explosive plays that have defined this offense were noticeably absent. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle had good games statistically, 115 yards and a touchdown for Hill, 99 yards for Waddle, but the offense as a whole felt disjointed. When you're playing a team like the Jets, it shouldn't feel this difficult to move the ball. The running game was practically non-existent, managing just 44 yards on 19 carries. That's an abysmal 2.3 yards per carry, and it made the offense one-dimensional. The lack of balance allowed the Jets to focus on stopping Miami's passing game, which they did effectively for much of the second half. It's a credit to Jonnu Smith that he stepped up in overtime, making 3 big catches for 44 yards, including the game-winning touchdown. Without his contributions, this might have been a very different conversation. Despite putting up 32 points, the offense didn't feel dominant. The numbers looked good on paper, but it didn't translate to a performance that felt commanding. It's frustrating because you know this team is capable of so much more. That's what makes games like this so hard to watch. You can see the potential, but it's not being realized consistently. If Miami can't find a way to put together a complete performance, games like this one will be the rule rather than the exception. One bright spot was rookie tackle Patrick Paul, who stepped in after Terron Armstead went down with another injury. Paul wasn't perfect, but he held his own, which is encouraging for a player many considered a long-term project. With Armstead's future uncertain, Paul's development could be critical for the Dolphins moving forward. Next week's game against Houston will be a big test for him, as the Texans have a formidable pass rush that will challenge the rookie. If he can hold his ground, it could be a sign that Miami's offensive line is finally starting to solidify. Kicker Jason Sanders added his own layer of drama to the game. After Miami's first touchdown, he missed the extra point wide left, leaving the Dolphins with 6 points instead of 7. In a game that ended up going to overtime, that kind of mistake could have been disastrous. To his credit, Sanders redeemed himself with a clutch 52-yard field goal to send the game into overtime, but his inconsistency remains a concern. Sanders has had an up-and-down career, alternating between stellar seasons and shaky ones. This year has been somewhere in the middle, and while he's probably the best option the Dolphins have, his unpredictability doesn't exactly inspire confidence.